First, let me start off with some background. I've been going to the gym for about 6 years consistently, every single day, and mostly in the evenings around 8 or 9 p.m., and my workouts usually last until 10 or 11 p.m. Around summer of 2018, I switched to LA Fitness, which is a really big health club chain. I'd been going there for about 6 months when an older man, around his 30s, early 40s, I say old because I was 18 at the time, and that seemed old to me, began to approach me nearly every single time I was at the gym. He was Hispanic, shorter, around 5'8", and I believe he told me his name, I forgot it, as well as how old he was, which I also forgot. Now, keep in mind, I'm an 18-year-old 5'2" female. So in the beginning, I took his attentions to be friendly, and I was friendly back to him, but I tried to end conversations quickly because he liked to chat for a long time, and I just wanted to get my workouts done. In the beginning, when he first started approaching me, he would tell me how he thought I was very beautiful, that he would love to take me out for drinks, etc. He asked me for my name and how old I was, which I told him because I thought that was innocent enough. He also told me he had a young daughter with his ex, whom he described as psycho, and he told me he would love for me to meet his daughter. Obviously, I brushed all of these invites off, and eventually, I began to get really annoyed. I would dread showing up to the gym because I didn't want to be approached by him. One day, after about a year of him approaching me nearly every day, regardless of me changing my times of going to the gym, he would spend hours there. An older gentleman who was exercising on a bike behind me noticed this man come up to me. By this time, I had been ignoring the creepy guy every single time he approached me for several weeks, pretending to focus extra hard on my workout and listening to my music. He stood next to me and began speaking, calling my name, trying to get my attention, but I just kept ignoring. After a few minutes, I guess he started feeling awkward and walked away. The gentleman behind me got my attention and told me that he had seen the guy talking to me several times and even watching me work out from a distance every time I was at the gym, and that I should report him and straight up just tell him to leave me alone because what he was doing was harassment. I told him thank you and just decided to brush it off as him just being an extra creepy guy. The next time he tried to approach me, I told him to leave me alone, that I had a boyfriend, and that I was not interested. After that, he left me alone. Occasionally, I would work out with one of my friends, who told me that she noticed a strange, older Hispanic man watching me work out at the gym, but I just brushed that off too. I know I sound really stupid. I truly thought he wasn't a threat though. Flash forward, December of 2019. I was nearing the end of my workout. It was 11 p.m. when I noticed him at the gym. I didn't think he had spotted me yet, so as soon as I saw him, I decided to cut my workout short and began walking to the front doors of the gym. I had one headphone in and one out, just in case. The gym was relatively empty by that time, and so I was a little nervous to walk alone to my car in the dark, even though I had parked close to the entrance. As I was about to reach the doors, I hear him calling my name.
Stephanie, Stephanie.
I immediately began to panic, and I started walking faster. He, I shit you not, started tapping my back and gripped my arm, still saying my name. By this point, some people in the gym had started to pay attention, and I briefly turned to him and yanked my arm away. I ran out of the gym to my car, locked the doors, and left. He had never done anything like that before, so I was shaken by it. By the time I went to work out again the next day, around 8 p.m., I had talked myself out of being scared and decided I would just keep my eyes open and be extra cautious of him if he showed up. I was working out by the dumbbell area on the far end of the gym, where the benches are and a mirror spanning the whole wall. Machines and workout equipment were behind me, and through the mirror, I could see everything going on. I see him enter and walk to a machine a few feet behind me, and so I began hurrying my workout. I finish a set of an exercise I'm doing, and I look up in the mirror to see what he's doing, and see him smiling at me from his machine into the mirror. I get immediate goosebumps and begin to put all of my equipment away. I avoid looking in his direction or the mirror at all. When I come back to pick up my water bottle, which I had left on the bench I was working out on, I briefly notice someone sitting on the bench next to mine. I look in the mirror to scan my surroundings again, and right next to me is him, again, staring at me in the mirror. Extremely on edge and nervous by this point, I immediately leave, asking one of the front desk attendants to walk me to my car. I got into my car, locked the doors, and called my boyfriend to tell him what had happened. After 10 minutes of talking in the parking lot, I noticed the big truck directly across from me turn on and turn their brights on straight in my face. I thought it was strange, so I squinted into the light to see who might be in there. It was just the outline of a smaller man. I quickly realized it must have been the guy from the gym, and so I booked it out of there, checking my mirrors to see if anyone was following me. By that time, I was shaking, and I noticed the truck pulling out of the parking lot and driving behind me. I still couldn't clearly make out who it was, but I was freaking out. I drove almost all the way home with the same truck still behind me. I quickly realized I couldn't literally just lead him to my house, because out of all the stupid things I had done so far, that would be the stupidest. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot that was lit and really populated and waited to see what he would do. He kept driving past me, and I waited 20 minutes before driving home, making sure I was not being followed. After all of that, you would think I would just change gyms and call the police. Well, no. 18-year-old me still denied that it 100% was him or that anything would happen to me. The rest of that week, I had no encounters with him, and so the incident began to leave my mind. The next Tuesday, it was January 2020 now, I was at the gym once again, and around 11 p.m. I had finished my workout and was about to leave. I hadn't really paid attention to whether the guy was there or not, and I scanned the gym once before leaving, but didn't see anything. I headed to my car, got in, forgot to lock the doors, and sat there texting my boyfriend, asking when he could call. We were long distance at that time, so we usually called at night. All of a sudden, someone starts knocking on my window. I jump slightly and look out my window, and it is him. He starts calling my name, and I see him reaching down to the door handle. Somehow, in those few moments, I remembered I hadn't locked my doors, and I immediately hit the lock button. The smile that formed on his face is one I will never, ever forget. He looked almost smug, like he knew that even that wouldn't help me. He began banging on my window and telling me to unlock and open the door repeatedly. Eventually he moved to pulling on the door handle. In retrospect, I realized my first instinct should have been to call the police, but in that moment, I decided to call my boyfriend. My phone instantly hooked up to my car's Bluetooth, and it started to ring very loudly, even on the outside. I think that's really what saved me. As soon as he heard the ringing, I assume he believed I was calling the police, and he immediately ran away and got into the car one over from mine. He pulled out, and it was the same big truck that had been shining its headlights at me and had followed me almost all the way home a week before. I was shaking with fear and talking to my boyfriend, explaining what had happened, and I also called my mom and told her what had happened. I don't know why, but I never called the police to report it, mostly because I wasn't sure that they would believe me or that I had any evidence to back me up. But I have since then changed gyms, gotten a taser, I work out only during the day, and I look over my shoulder every single time I'm somewhere alone. I still wonder what would have happened that night if I hadn't remembered my doors were unlocked. He could have been a rapist, kidnapper, serial killer, anything, even just a desperate man. Either way, we are gym dude. Let's not meet. I'm not sure how scary this is to you guys, because the initial encounter wasn't that scary. It was what happened after. I was walking down my street because I needed something from the store that was not that far away. It was daylight, and there were plenty of people around. So, as I'm walking, I see this guy that I have seen before around my house. He doesn't live on my street, but he used to have a girlfriend that lives just a couple of houses from me. They dated for a long time, but at this point, they were broken up for almost as much time. For some context, this man is over 10 years older than me. I usually always say hello, as it is something we do in my country a lot, especially in your neighborhood. Before I could even say anything, he raised his hand for me to do a high five with him. I did the high five, and I lowered my hand, only he wasn't letting go. He gently held my hand while speaking to me. The conversation went like this. Creep.
Hey, sweetie, how have you been?
Me. I'm pretty good. How are you? He started staring at my body, which is making me feel weird, so I say the first thing that comes to mind. Me. I'm covered in dog hair. My dog is shedding right now. Creep.
You look amazing. Like really, really good.
He says this with such a creepy smile, and he looks me up and down a couple of times. He still is holding my hand. I was so uncomfortable that I just said my friend is waiting for me and left. Me and my friend would joke around about him being a creep after I told her the story. It was funny until a couple of months later when his initials were all over the news. He tried to R-word an underage girl, and when I say underage, I mean not even a teenager yet. He threatened her with a knife and even cut her many times over her body. Thankfully, he wasn't successful in getting away with her because she ran away and asked someone to call the police right away. He's in jail right now, but I still remember his creepy smile and the gentle yet disturbing touch. I hope he never sees the sunlight again. When I was younger, 17, I lived in a small village of 1,200 people. Usually every year, there is a local town festival, and all the adults go for dinner and party at the town hall, where they perform some acting and make fun of the year that just passed. Usually this is in February, so it's snowy and dark pretty early. When this festival is, there are absolutely all 13 to 17-year-old girls booked for babysitting. Me and my two friends went for a drive around the town, since you have to be 18 to go to the party. So we just drove around, giving people lifts to the party to earn some extra cash. Since there's no taxi in this town, that was a great way to get some extra pocket money. We had been driving for a couple of hours, and of course, we knew where everyone lived, and some of the adults asked us to drive past their house to make sure everything was all right, and give the parents some extra comfort. I think it was also to give us some tasking until the party was over, so they could get a lift home. In one of the older neighborhoods in the town, there were low floodlights, so we just drove slowly, and one mom, who we gave a lift to earlier, lived there. She was a widow with 3 young children, 2, 4, and 8, if I recall correctly, and her niece, 15, was babysitting. The time was around 10 p.m., and when we drove in this neighborhood, which is surrounded by hills and some cliffs, my friend swore that he saw someone move in her garden. We thought little of it and just said it was probably a cat or something. We kept driving to the other end of the town, but my friend in the back seat said that he had a bad feeling and wanted to drive back to her house and check if we could see some footprints in the snow. When we got back there, we parked the car and looked over the fence, and there were fairly new human footprints in the snow, adult size. So we all looked at each other and decided to follow the trail. The trail went past all the bedrooms, but near every window, the footprint turned to the window, like someone was trying to peek in. Eventually, the trail ended on the street, and we lost it where the snowplow had been earlier in the night. We chatted if we should go get the mom from the party or ring the doorbell to check if everything was all right. Since none of the tracks led to the back door or the front door, we decided that the 2 of us would stay in the neighborhood hidden and monitor the house, and the driver would drive to the police station and pick up the mom on the way back. That was a good call. Maybe 5 minutes after he left, we saw someone lurking behind one of the garages a couple houses down. He wasn't moving, just sat there with a cigarette. We monitored from a distance since he couldn't see us. Then he stood up, looked around, and started to creep to the house where the mom lived, and he walked to the back door. Without thinking, me and my friends ran through the 2 gardens that were between where we were and the mom's house was, so we would catch him trying to enter the back door. We arrived just in time that he was trying to open the door when we shouted at him, "What the fuck are you doing?" He made a run for it, and we followed. He ran down the street to get some speed ahead of us, but we were both athletes, so we were gaining on him. This was the most intense moment of our life. I remember the only thing I was thinking was to not slip and lose momentum. The end of the street was approaching, and the next turn would be 90 degrees to the right. So instead of slowing down, I jumped off the street so I could intercept him after he would lose speed by taking the turn. My calculation was wrong, and he managed to take the turn without losing much speed. I spent too much energy sprinting in a foot of deep snow, and I knew it was slowing me down. I was still about 10 meters behind him, but my friend was closer and gaining on him. When my friend realized he could kick his feet and trip him, he did. He fell, and this was the quickest takedown ever. We smashed his head to the frozen ground, and he was out. While we were catching our breath, he didn't move. We rolled him over on his back, and he was breathing, but really shallow, with a cracking noise. I was terrified. Millions of questions came to my head. Is he dying? What if this was just some relative making a prank? Why did we chase him? Meanwhile, my friend checked his pockets, and there was lubricant for adultery, strong sedatives, and a broken camera. Luckily, the driver came a couple of minutes after with the mom and the police. Then the ambulance arrived and took him away. The day after, we were brought in for questioning in the police station, and the chief told us that he was a known pedophile, not from our town. And we for sure saved the day, and probably more kids, since a tumble he took when he fell gave him bleeding in the brain, and he's not able to wipe his own ass anymore. We told him the story, and when my friend said he tripped him, the chief stopped typing and said, "Are you sure you tripped him? The way I see it, you 3 heroes caught a burglar in the act, and when he was running away, he fell and hit his head." He looked at us and nodded with a soft smile. Thinking back, this perv must have planned this, knowing when the festival was, knowing that she was a single mom, picking out the house, knowing that gives me the creeps.